Everybody keeps talking about this match like it is about the World Heavyweight Championship. And yes, technically, it is. There is a belt involved. There is a WrestleMania main event level spotlight involved. There is legacy involved. There is history involved. But that is not what this feud is really about. This feud is about something much uglier. Roman Reigns is dragging CM Punk into the one truth Punk has spent his entire career being brilliant enough to talk around. And that truth is simple. CM Punk does not fear losing the title nearly as much as he fears being seen as a man from another time. That is the nerve Roman keeps pressing. Not just age, not just mileage, not just the easy, you're old insult that every lazy wrestling feud reaches for when creative runs out of imagination. No, Roman is going after something meaner than that. He is attacking relevance. He is attacking present tense. He is basically looking at CM Punk and saying, you are still famous. You are still loud. You are still important, but you are not the era anymore. And that is brutal because it cuts directly into the center of who CM Punk is. See, Punk can survive being hated. Punk can survive being doubted. Punk can survive being booed, mocked, dismissed, blacklisted, worshipped, and dragged through every possible version of wrestling discourse because that has always been his natural habitat. Chaos is home for CM Punk. Conflict is home for CM Punk. Telling the world it is stupid while standing in the middle of it like a smirking arsonist has always been home for CM Punk. But irrelevance, that is different. Irrelevance is silence. Irrelevance is the room moving on without you. Irrelevance is becoming a brilliant story that fans tell in the past tense while somebody else stands in the center of the industry you once believed should revolve around you. And that is exactly why Roman Reigns is such a dangerous opponent for him. Because Roman is not just another challenger, Roman is the living embodiment of what the business became after CM Punk left. That is the first issue. Roman Reigns is not just fighting Punk. He is standing there as evidence. Evidence that WWE did not stop when Punk walked away. Evidence that a different face of the company took the throne. Evidence that the machine Punk once raged against found someone else to build around and built something massive. That is why the first confrontation between these two mattered so much. WWE's official setup for the match leaned hard into their verbal history, including Punk bringing up his role in helping bring the Shield to the main roster, Punk claiming Roman followed his example, and Roman firing back that Punk was an example of what not to do, and that the only reason Punk is back is because Roman allowed it. Roman also called out Punk for leaving WWE and trashing the company, while Punk hit Roman for being a part-timer. That is not normal trash talk. That is identity warfare. That is two men fighting over authorship of an era. Punk is basically saying, you built your empire in the shadow of things I already changed. Roman is basically saying, whatever you think you started, I turned it into a kingdom while you were gone. And honestly, Roman's side of that argument is terrifyingly strong, because Punk's mythology has always been built on rebellion. He is the anti-establishment genius, the guy who says what others cannot say, the guy who exposes the lie, the guy who breaks the fourth wall, breaks the script, breaks the illusion, and makes fans feel like they are seeing something more dangerous and more real than the shiny plastic version the company wants to sell them. That is the brand. That is the magic. That is why CM Punk works. But here is the problem. That trick only works perfectly when you are still the outsider. And CM Punk is not the outsider anymore. He is the World Heavyweight Champion. He is standing in the center of the company, holding the belt. He is not crashing the castle gates anymore. He is inside the castle. That changes everything. Because once the rebel becomes champion, once the anti-establishment voice becomes part of the establishment, the audience starts asking a question Punk never once asked too loudly. What exactly are you rebelling against now? And Roman knows it. That is why this feud feels like Roman is peeling layers off Punk rather than just insulting him. He is trying to expose the contradiction. He is trying to force Punk into the ugliest mirror imaginable. The mirror that says, you hate me because I became what you never got to be for this long. That is the next problem. Roman Reigns became the center of WWE in a way CM Punk never fully did. Not for a moment, not for a summer, not for a hot streak, for an era. That matters because Punk's legend is built on intensity. Roman's is built on dominance. Punk burns bright. Roman takes over the sky. And when Roman looks at Punk, I think he sees a man whose influence is real, but whose control was never complete. That is why Roman keeps circling back to status, power, permission, and the idea that Punk only exists in this spot because Roman allows him to. Is that arrogant? Of course it is. It is Roman Reigns. Arrogance is basically coming out of his pores at this point. But the reason it lands is because it is attached to something real. Roman can point to years of being the gravitational center of WWE television. Roman can point to an era that bent around him. Roman can point to the fact that whether fans loved him, hated him, or wanted him gone, they still had to deal with him as the defining power in the company. Punk had influence. Roman had the throne. That difference is what Roman is weaponizing. And every time Punk gets emotional, every time Punk makes it personal, every time Punk reacts like a man who has been cut too close to the bone, it makes Roman's case stronger. Look at how this feud has escalated. On March 16th, Punk laid Roman out in a shocking confrontation. 1 week later, Roman fired back by spearing Punk during an intense segment that also involved the Usos after Punk insulted them. Then on March 30th, Punk powerbombed Roman Reigns through the announce table. And on the final Raw before WrestleMania, WWE explicitly framed the segment as Roman and Punk expressing hatred in a shocking war of words. That is not a feud slowly building around sportsmanship. That is two men attacking the parts of themselves they hate seeing reflected in the other. Because here's the twisted part. Roman is exposing Punk, but Punk also exposes Roman. Roman hates Punk because Punk has a kind of cultural connection. Roman has never fully owned in the same way. Punk feels dangerous in a different register. Punk feels like a voice, like a symbol, like a man who can grab a microphone and turn the whole room into a courtroom where the audience suddenly thinks they are hearing forbidden truth. Roman has dominance, Punk has myth, and that is why this rivalry works so well. Roman wants to prove myth is not enough. Punk wants to prove the machine still cannot fully control the room when he opens his mouth. But if you ask me which side of that conflict is more psychologically revealing right now, it is Roman's. Because Roman is not just calling Punk old. He is not just saying the title reign is fake. He is not just trying to humiliate him. He is setting a trap. The trap is this: make CM Punk defend not just his championship, but his present tense importance. Make him argue that he's still the guy. Make him fight not merely to win, but to prove he belongs at the center of a company that learned how to move without him. That is exhausting pressure, and that is identity pressure, and that is the kind of pressure that exposes the truth. And the truth Roman wants the world to see is not that Punk is washed. That would be too simple. Roman wants the world to see that Punk is terrified. Terrified not that he is physically finished, but that he will be seen as historically important and currently replaceable. That is a much more painful accusation. Because a legend can survive losing a match, a legend can survive a bad night, a legend can even survive getting cheated. But surviving the realization that you are no longer the center of gravity, that is harder. That sticks. That follows you home. And WrestleMania is the perfect stage for it because WrestleMania is where mythology either gets confirmed or corrected. If Punk wins, he gets to scream that the old fire still burns hot enough to torch the so-called era Roman built. If Roman wins, especially if he wins in a way that leaves Punk looking like he was fighting not just a man but the full weight of time, then this feud becomes devastating for Punk's image. Because then Roman is not just a challenger who took the title. He becomes a man who proved that CM Punk's greatest enemy was never WWE management, never part-timers, never politics, never betrayal. It was the calendar. And that is the one thing CM Punk cannot pipe bomb his way out of. That is why I think Roman Reigns is winning this feud even before the bell rings. He has already forced the conversation away from can Punk beat Roman? Now the conversation is what happens if Roman is right about Punk? That is a much darker question, because if Roman is right, then this whole feud is not about championship gold at all. It is about the final humiliation for a man who built his identity on being ahead of the business. Imagine that. The great anti-establishment truth-teller, now having to beg the world not to see him as yesterday's revolution wearing today's championship. That is vicious. That is why this works. That is why this feud feels alive. Roman Reigns is not merely trying to beat CM Punk at WrestleMania 42. He is trying to force CM Punk to stand in the middle of the ring, under the biggest lights in wrestling, and confront the one truth he cannot joke away, rage away, or promo away. That may be the reason Roman gets under his skin so easily is because Roman represents the era that kept going without him. And if that is true, then CM Punk is not just fighting Roman Reigns. He is fighting the possibility that the business he once shook to its core has already decided who the real center of the modern WWE universe is. And that is the one truth CM Punk cannot hide from.